When you travel and you go see other places, I think it makes you appreciate where you came from, and it gives you a different perspective.
I had to figure out a way to make the farm pay for itself, because when I went to graduate school, my paycheck got cut in half.
There's a misconception with a lot of goats sometimes that I'll just stick them out there, they'll eat anything, you know, and it's not like that at all.
And I think we've brought you full circle too.
Yeah.
Because after being in it for so long, you know, you can kind of start to feel a little bit like, oh, you know, yeah, I love the goats, but I'm not like crazy about them.
They leave my farm, they ought to do really well at other people's farms.
This year is the first year that anyone's done the soap full time. Part of our selling point is that we don't want it to be too expensive.
Awesome. So Mandy, you've been on this farm for 30 years?
Oh, 30, I came here in 1980, something like that, yeah.
So yeah, a long time.
Over 30 years.
Yeah, a long time. Yeah. And have you always had dairy goats here?
Yes, that's how I ended up here, because of the goat. So when I met my husband, a friend of ours kind of said, oh, I have this friend and he's got some goats. And I said, oh really, I need my goats bred. And so I had 2 animals that I had gotten from a friend of mine that I was in school with. He came here to Athens for college. I had actually graduate school. And I had a friend that actually lived in a neighborhood over here. She had some fenced in area and I was trying to keep my goats over there. And her land actually abuts to this property.
Okay.
And so they were like, oh, well, we all know this guy John and he lives down and he's got some goats. And I was like, oh, well, maybe I can use his buck to breed my goats. And that's kind of how I met him and then came here.
So wait a minute, you've had goats longer than that then. So you've been on this land for over 30 years, but you've had goats longer. So where did this goat relationship come from?
I had a friend who was in college, graduate school with me, and she wanted to get some goats. And I went with her, and we went and bought these. They had these people were selling out, and they had these last 2 babies, and one was a buck and one was a doe. She was interested in the doe, and the buck was so cute. And I bought him. He was only, I don't know, $25 or something. Because I had this brilliant idea that I would take him with me to camp that summer.
For educational purposes?
Yes, for education.
Because you're a teacher.
Right, but at the time I wasn't a teacher.
Okay.
I was just I was a graduate student in reproductive physiology.
Interesting.
And actually, I'm sorry, she bought the buck, I bought the doe. That was my first goat, and we named her Spaz because she was a spaz. I took her and I put her in the back of my Jeep, and I drove all the way to Virginia to the Boy Scout camp, and I had this little goat. She was about as big as this little buckling here. And so she spent the whole summer with me up there. And so then when I came back, that same friend, I had to take her and put her in with her goats in another neighborhood not far from me, because I lived in a duplex.
Yeah.
There was no place to keep a goat.
Right.
And then when that friend decided she didn't want goats in the farm anymore, all of a sudden I had 3 goats instead of 1. So I kind of built, and then when I came here, he had just regular rolled scrubby goats that I had no idea what kind they were. So I ended up selling all of his and usurping them with my goats. So that's kind of how it worked. I started with that. Then I took that young buck that I bought, and he told me to take it to a show. And so I took it to a show and got reserve grand, and
wow,
that just started the whole thing.
So you were getting your master's degree in reproductive physiology. You professionally have become a teacher, and you still are teaching.
Right. I worked in research for many years.
Okay.
So I worked for the University of Georgia, then I worked for a biotech company, and then after that, I started doing outreach and teaching teachers about biotechnology, and that helping teachers teach labs.
Okay.
I realized, and that was my, worked in research labs.
Yeah. Now you also have this prosperous, successful farm with dairy goats and selling soaps and lotions and things.
Just soaps.
Just soaps.
No lotion.
No.
And I did that to pay my way for graduate school. I had to figure out a way to make the farm pay for itself, because when I went to graduate school, my paycheck got cut in half. So I had to come up with a way to make the goats pay for themselves. And selling milk, I don't know if you know about regulations, but Georgia, up to this point, has always been you can sell milk for pet consumption, but not human consumption. It's kind of hard to make a really viable business. It's a nice little sideline selling milk for pet consumption, and so the other way to make money is to sell animals for meat, which really isn't that profitable, and then to sell animals for show. But then again, that's can be dicey. There's been this huge uprising again of people who want to homestead.
Yeah.
So that's another market for the dairy goats themselves. But in the meantime, you know, I always believe that being in a farm, you have to have more than one source of income. Those are kind of all my ways of looking at trying to make the ends meet with the goats.
Yeah, I love that. So the goats paid for themselves, but then were they also paying extra? Or
Well,
just for themselves so that you weren't paying for them?
So technically the soap is where we make the money.
Okay.
So the goats are kind of like, they pay for themselves feeding wise, but they don't really pay for the vet bills and the whole, because I don't sell enough goat. My daughter, other daughter always reminds me, she thinks I don't sell them for enough money. So it's kind of it's a fine line. If I've had over the years outlets for the milk, and you know, that would help push me over the edge on that part. But the real profitability is in the soap.
Is in the soap.
Yeah, the soap is by far.
That's where everybody else that's here comes into the conversation.
That's right.
Because they also help on the farm then. So you have Matt, who's full-time here.
Yes.
And then your daughter, Sam, what do you do off the farm? Or are you on the farm as well full-time?
No, I teach at a Montessori school.
Okay.
So I'm a teacher as well.
Very cool.
I was teaching in public ed for a while, and then I moved abroad, and then that's where I met my husband. And then came back and wanted to work in Montessori education.
Okay.
So I'm now getting my certification for that.
Very cool.
But
Which
also,
certification are you working on?
9 to 12-year-olds.
Awesome.
Yeah, so
Very
I work at Athens Montessori School now. But when I'm here, let's see, I help with the markets. I help with the baby goats, various things around here that need to be done. I help with soap when Matt hasn't finished it all already.
Yeah.
Just things that need to be done, you know.
Yeah.
I kind of am more of like half of part-time, really,
Okay.
with the farm, but most of it's done with these two, so.
But how nice must that feel for all three of you that you're not solely relying on yourself or just one person on the farm, which is common a lot on farming, I feel like. So you can kind of pick up the slack where it is.
Some babies in here.
Oh, look at the babies. So Matt, you said this is your favorite spot.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite spots when I'm feeding the babies.
Why is
We've
that?
got a little stall set up here.
Oh, yes.
And you can just look out onto the lake. It's a bit muddy today.
Yeah,
a lot of rain.
we've had a lot of rain.
A lot of rain.
Usually
recently.
it's absolutely beautiful.
Nice
Yeah.
and green.
Yeah.
And when the trees are in
Yeah.
bloom, I'm
yeah,
sure.
yeah. So usually I would especially like lunchtime feeds. I'll come up here and just hang out and probably spend way too much more time than I need to, but just sort of sitting with these guys and these
Come on,
four.
baby.
So we usually take the the girls off, or the doelings off.
Why is that?
Because to bottle feed them, it friendlies them up.
Yep.
So then when we're going to be, using them, milking them in the future, makes it easier to handle. And they're, sometimes they're too friendly. They're sort of all up in your business. But other times, it just makes it so much easier that they'll just come into the milk and then they'll just go again. And, and it just makes it easier as well. So
do you leave the bucklings on then?
Yeah, and then that's just because sometimes the goats don't really like it when you take all their babies away.
We're a bunch of weenies, okay?
Yeah.
Because over the years, because it's just been me, basically, and I work full-time. Luckily, I worked in research labs. That gave me a lot of wiggle room. But in general, I don't have time to bottle feed.
Yeah.
So if I had to bottle feed, it was because somebody couldn't take care of their babies or somebody died or who knows what. So it was more like I had to bottle feed, and then I would have to drag them to work, and because I'm just far enough, not that I can't just run home and bottle feed. So it was more like something that it didn't fit into my lifestyle.
Absolutely.
So kind of like the bottle raising has come later because now we have extra hands.
Has it helped? Has it improved things?
Oh God, it makes, when we go back out there, you'll notice there's like a couple goats that stand way off up there, and those are non-bottle fed babies.
Oh, okay.
And it's so irritating because of the way we run things, unlike, cows and stuff like that, where you run them through chutes and things like that. We don't do that with the goats. And so getting them down when you want to do something like vaccinate, or if you have to treat them for something, and
trimming feet.
and all of that kind of stuff, or when they are in milk, they kind of like, well, I just don't feel like coming in the milking parlor today, and so I may have chased them the first few times and I just give up and so then they don't get milked properly and it's just a downhill slide from there.
Yeah.
Now, if there's a buck or two that I want to sell for good money, then we will keep them in bottle raise. But I don't tend to keep many of my bucks just from it's not good from a standpoint of genetics and things like that. I always keep something that I really believe that needs to be kept.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they usually go as pets.
Okay.
Most of the time. People will pay more for pets.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, because you said that you have multiple avenues that you sell from. So, you sell the live goats. Do you sell meat for the? I mean, they're dairy breeds, so they probably don't.
Not
really
in general, because I do sell animals for meat, but usually it's somebody who needs to go for meat. If it's an animal that is not, they're just genetically not. They're sucky looking for some reason.
But it's never the intention.
It's not, most of the time it's not the intention. Sometimes I know, but it's really not, you can't, what do you sell them for?
Right.
$50, $75?
Right.
I mean, I already have that much in them in the first week, right? So we run things, it's just not conducive to selling for meat.
But
there's been a big boom with pets, though.
Yeah.
It really has been, even just half acre of land.
Yeah, the Nigerians have helped a lot because people kind of got into goats with the
Nigerian
so many
dwarfs,
little dwarfs, and so then they got used to having goats, and then sometimes they'll look to the larger breeds because all of a sudden they want to milk or whatever.
They've realized how hard the Nigerians are to
yeah, because
so
they're
need something a bit bigger.
as farmers, how does that make you feel that a lot of people want pet goats or a livestock animal? Is that like an interesting cross?
I don't have any problem with that. I don't care how they come into it.
Yeah.
And usually as well, they'll come here. You make sure they come here as well to look at them before you commit to anything.
Yeah, I do a big spiel.
Chat with them for ages, go through medications and vaccines. Make sure that they're not just. Because there's a misconception with a lot of goats sometimes that I'll just stick them out there, they'll eat anything, and it's not like that at all. So
especially the dairy breed.
Yeah, of course. So whenever anyone contacts us about the goats, make sure they come out, chat with them,
get a good feel for them.
Get a good feel for them. Yeah, it's very rare that you'll think, I don't want to sell them.
But you said that often it's through experience, you kind of get a feel for somebody's voice and how interested they really are, or are they just calling to kind of figure it out? Or because you've been doing this so long, you kind of know now.
Right, and that's an issue that a lot of my friends have.
Okay. A lot of your people who have goats.
Because a lot of people get into goats are not people. Because they tend to be people who want to be homesteading somewhere, and so they're not wanting. So that is a huge problem in the industry because they don't want to deal with people. They get mad because they can't sell their goats, but on the other hand, they're not willing to it's a lot of work making sales. People think, oh, well, why don't they just come buy them, and it's not, because you have to schmooze people. You have to make them, they want to buy because of you, right?
My dad always said people buy from people they like.
Yeah, that's right.
True.
Yeah. And so, and if you want them to spend $600 with you or $400 with you, they're going to have to feel like they're getting their money's worth, right? Or they could just go to the sale barn if they want. And
how do you tread that and be the people person, but also be like the on the farm away from people person?
I think being an educator helps a lot.
Yeah.
And always being an educator. So I really don't focus on the sale, so to speak. That's probably my problem, is because I don't charge enough, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So it's kind of like, the secret is, if somebody shows up, I do in my mind have animals I want to sell. But if they turn out to be somebody I really think, oh, wow, they'd be good, they really think, then all of a sudden there's more goats for sale. And so it's kind of, I have to get a feel for the person.
Yeah.
And then, and then I might even make a deal if I want them to buy more than what. So that's where I start falling apart as a salesperson. Other than that, that's kind of how it works.
So you said that goat farmers have to learn a lot of things on their own.
Right.
Other than like the things we just talked about. What else do you mean by that?
So they have to be able, you have to give, of course, your own shots, your own vaccines, you have to be able to set legs when they're broken, be able to know how to take samples for turning in milk samples if the animals might have mastitis or something like that.
Now, for me, coming from a farmer myself, those things that you mentioned seem like anything, you know, any livestock farmer needs.
Right.
But you say it specifically for goats. Is that because are goats more of an entry-level livestock? Do you think? I've heard from a lot of people that they got goats because cows were too intimidating.
No, a lot of people, well, when it comes to dairy goats, what my understanding is most of the time when I started getting into dairy goats is the fact that people have a child that is milk intolerant.
Okay.
So when they get a goat to milk, or a lot of homeschool families. When one of those first books was written, I can't remember what it was called, Paradise or something, I can't think of that book. It came out of California, and a family talked about one of the first homeschooling stories.
Okay.
And I remember they had goats.
Okay.
And so it's kind of like that's where this whole swell kind of started back.
Like the homeschooling, homesteading kind of mentality.
And so those people tend to be more city,
Yeah.
or at least maybe a little bit rural, but mostly city people. And they, you know, like you said, they got into goats and they know nothing. It's not like my dad raised cows and I decided to get goats.
Right.
It's more that kind of a
Yeah.
background, just like me.
Right.
So, and then of course the goats are easier because for women especially, because they're not huge.
Yeah.
And I can restrain them and do things with them, so it makes it a little bit easier.
The things that you have to learn that you mentioned, and Matt, you had to learn those things.
Yeah.
Do you find it difficult to learn on your own?
Not really. I mean, I've been guided a lot, really, and you know, just by doing.
Right.
And you know, watching Mandy, and you know, I'm very lucky that we can sort of double check with things, you know, and I've got
Right.
Zoe as well that can, you know, the vet.
Yeah,
They
your
can-
sister-in-law who's a
Yeah,
vet.
they can help. You know, if a goat's sick, but I think just spending a lot of time with the herd, I can see what's not right now. You know, before this goes back a few years when I was coming backwards and forwards or just helping out. But like, yeah, spending a lot of time with the herd, you can sort of see things when things aren't right, and you think, you know, like, kind of. I know that now.
Right.
I know what to do now.
Yeah, he'll say, "Oh, so and so didn't come up and eat,"
Yeah.
or she lagged behind, and that's the livestock eye that you
Yeah.
start
Yeah.
gaining.
So usually, you know, like in the mornings, you know, I'll start feeding down there. They'll all come running down, and then you sort of look around, you make sure everyone's there, and that one's not. Thanks, bud. That one's not there. That one, because you know they all want to eat, you
Right.
know, and then you go up and there's one just hanging out at the barn on their own. You're like, that doesn't seem right. So you know, you don't necessarily know what it is, but you just know something's not right.
Yeah.
And, you know, that kind of thing.
So even though it feels like we've got like 3 generations or maybe 3 different types of farmers here. So we've got the one city raised, didn't know anything, found it, got it, raised in it, and then city raised fell into a family who had it.
Yeah.
What differences and similarities do you guys see in how you handle the farm, how you handle the livestock, but also as like just a personality trait? I'm curious.
I think being like attentive to some of the goats, how there's a few goats that were very like, we treat like pets, you know, and that kind of happens, you know, coming in from a different, coming into it like I did. You know, you get attached to a few of them, and that's maybe a bit different to sort of traditional farming, where, you know, you try not to get attached to a lot of them because it's very, you know...
You can't sell cotton.
That kind of thing, right? That kind of thing. So, you know, you can't sell that one. We love that one. And when, you know, and it's eating up, you know, all that grain and not producing any milk, you know, from a farm point of view, you probably should move them on, you know, that kind of thing. So.
Well, they have a personality that lends to that.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the other problem.
Yeah.
You know, they get attached.
They like
They're
rubs.
obnoxious, and they have temperaments like a dog and like a horse.
Yeah.
So they are more you know, inquisitive and curious, and so they're not as, you know, unfriendly. You know?
And goats are very perceptive as well. You know,
Yeah.
you can tell the way you speak to them, where you act around them. They'll respond. You know, they won't just sort of stand there.
Yeah.
You know, they're very, you know, very receptive to how you are with them too, which is very interesting.
And I think we've brought you full circle too.
Yeah.
Because after being in it for so long, you know, you can kind of start to feel a little bit like, oh, you know, yeah, I love the goats, but I'm not like crazy about them. You know.
Yeah, kind of tough.
So much you've had so many goats like pass away, or you've sold so many, or, you know, so you
Or
just
numb
kinda
to
get
the
numb to
experience.
it.
Yeah.
But I think us getting back into it has kind of brought you back around to like,
It can be infectious, can't it?
a little
You know,
bit
that
more.
Right,
kind of-
it's made me, like, you know, kind of put more life into it, so to speak, you know, to see, oh, there's some different points of view. So that's what's been nice about it.
Yeah. Sam, with having your mom and her experiences and your husband and his experiences, what do you see in those differences and similarities between their livestock management ideas and things?
I think they're both very caring towards the animals. I think Mom comes at it from the standpoint of the experience and been doing it for a while. But then I think Matt brings in like a fresh eyes through it all, because he, having come from no animals like household,
Yeah.
to all of a sudden has animals. It's kind of like he does things and says things that maybe Mom hasn't thought about or thought about it that way, or. But I think they're both pretty like for the animals, so I think that's.
Are you guys able to
helpful.
like maintain a big open mind? I know, like, so when my husband and I got together, and I tell this story often, I am a 6th generation farmer. I grew up with cattle my whole life. So when Paul and I got together and we had our own farm and we started running cattle, I'd be like, well, why didn't you go that way? And he's like, how was I supposed to know? I'm like, doesn't everybody know? He's like, no, Olivia, nobody knows. You have to teach them. I'm like, I knew things that I didn't know I knew, and I didn't know someone else didn't know. Are you guys able to maintain like that open mind?
Definitely, yeah. I think like I'm always happy to defer as well. Like if Mandy says you do it that way, I'm not going to argue. you know?
Right.
And it's never like it's never a bad thing. You know, I'm not going to. It doesn't need to be a discussion. It's
Right.
Like, I'll just do that and I'll do it. You know,
Right.
that kind of thing. Because I know that my knowledge is minuscule compared to that. So, you know, and you know, I'll try and act on instinct, and I'll always ask as well.
Right.
Like I'll always like make sure, you know, and
Yeah.
and you know, because I don't want to. There's certain things that I can do that I know, you know, I'm confident in, but there's a lot of things where I will have to just still ask, and I'm happy to do so.
Sounds like there's a lot of respect for that knowledge then too. I think, unfortunately, sometimes in the farming sector, new blood can get in and they've got all these big ideas.
Yeah.
And it's great to have all those big ideas, but also paying respect to the previous generation of knowing how things are done.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't know why we've been doing them that way.
That's
But
I
we
think-
know that we've been doing them
because
that way.
he'll ask me that, you know, why do you have to do it that way? And I'm like, I don't know. And
It just
so
works.
I think there's definitely we've got that balance of like, not that, you know, it's more like if it's all, you know, you're not set in your ways,
Right.
but it doesn't mean that my different way's right. You know, I think we've got that balance of thinking about things differently.
Yeah.
You know, even if it's not, you know, not my suggestion, it then just still sparks up a different way of, well, actually, it could be this way instead. You know,
And I'm pretty, I don't know, I think I'm pretty good at going ahead and say, all right, if you want to try it that way, go ahead. You know, and sometimes it works out better.
Yeah.
And other times I'm like, I'm right, but if he hadn't have done it, then he wouldn't have understood why.
Yeah.
So if I let him go ahead and make some mistakes, if I just stop, you know, try not to be type A or something.
Well, I think that also
you know?
that puts responsibility on other people in a good way as well.
Yeah.
If you let them, but you're not gonna, you know, shower them for making a mistake. It's always good. Like, okay, we'll try it, and then you know we'll be here to sort of put it right if it doesn't. You know.
It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then that, because then otherwise it makes you sort of, you know, a bit disillusioned with doing it. So why am I doing it? If I'm just
he's not going to try things. If I'm constantly telling him, you know, you can't do it this way or whatever.
Which is something you have found with other sort of farmers, right? When they've struggled to keep, all right, it's different because I'm related, but when they've had help in, they're like, why can't I keep helping? You know, and it's probably because they're sort of micromanaging because it needs to be done a certain way rather than you know, telling them and just letting them.
Yes,
Find their own
there's a
way.
perfect example of that. I had read on Facebook or something, and somebody was complaining about they had some farm sitters, and they came back and things weren't done the way they wanted to do.
Okay.
And I personally, the first thing that hit my mind is I was like, yeah, because you tried to make them do too much, and you didn't pay attention to their skill level. And then third, you didn't leave clear enough instructions.
Yeah.
You know, I have friends, love them to death, but when we've taken care of their animals, we got 3 pages. Remember? And I would be reading, and she'd be like, okay, what was that again? I was like, okay, so you take a half a scoop, and you mix it with this. Wait a minute, what bucket are we supposed to, what is us half
Use
a
the
scoop?
green bucket,
Which
not the
scoop?
orange
Which
bucket.
scoop, you know?
It's been like that in
And
places.
and so over the time, I've tried to learn, like if we go away on a trip, we don't leave anything complicated for the people that take care of the animals. And so I try not to, that's a big deal, that's a big sore point with me, is my animals are not high maintenance, pampered, because I can't have that.
Yeah.
So I don't, I've heard, oh, everything. Like this goat won't eat this kind of feed, but this one will. So when they're on the milking station, we feed them this one and we feed that one, this one, and this one. I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
You know, that's just
Either you eat or you don't, and that's what we've got to do.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
But people will do that because the goats, they lend themselves to that type of. And people get into it like they've got a herd of dogs, right? And you can
Which
make
is great.
Yeah, but you
It's
can
great
make
if you can.
yourself too much work.
Yeah.
And then people don't like it because all of a sudden, man, those goats are just a lot of work. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You know, and you find out that they've been, you know, I've been hand picking, you know, vegetables for them every day. You know, I'm like, what are you doing? I mean, that happens a lot. I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
Everything from the screaming. Every time I go to my house, the goats are screaming. As soon as I get out of my car, they're screaming. And I'm like, well, what do you, well, you know, I give them their treats, you know, every twice. And I'm like, well, you can't.
Every time they yell at me, I feed them.
Yeah,
Well, then they're gonna
Yeah.
they're gonna yell at you until you
I
beat
said,
them.
they are not stupid.
Yeah.
Normally our farm is very quiet. Our new friend here is
He came from spoiled.
very talkative
Yeah.
right now, but he'll calm down.
Yeah.
But the point I was trying to make is if you spoil or do all these special things, when you sell those animals, they're at a big, huge, what's the word?
Like a
They're-
disadvantage.
Disadvantage.
That's a good point.
And I really do not like that. I said, you know, if they leave my farm, they ought to do really well at other people's farms because I don't. I expect them to graze. I expect them to do stuff. They eat Bermuda grass. I don't have to buy alfalfa for them to eat. And because I've had animals come in and it's just been a nightmare trying to take care of them. And you're not doing the animals any service.
Not coming from like a generational farm where I feel like those farms tend to have succession plans basically in writing before the next generation's even born. What are your next steps, your next plans? Where is Latimer Luck Acres going to go? Who's going to
Like,
answer
looking
this
at me,
question?
I think, yeah.
Well,
We'll go this way because it's not.
so they want to stay. And my other 2 children want to be involved, but they don't necessarily want to have to, you know, do any.
Yeah, they want to be passive in it all.
Yeah,
and
they're
the-
Okay.
passive.
But so this year is the first year that anyone's done the soap full time because it's always just been like a side thing. You know, when Mandy started it, like she said, it was to pay for the PhD. Kind of sort of gathered pace, and then when we came back and when we were back, we'd get on board with it. We had a really good last 6 months last year, and so we were thinking, well, this could be really big. You know,
Yeah.
it was the 10th year, but it's the first year that someone's done it full time.
So where are you selling it at now?
So we sell it at a few farmers markets. So we got 3 local farmers markets, and then we're at wholesale. We're in a few stores around Georgia, maybe about 7 or 8 stores in Georgia.
Wow, that's awesome.
One in Florida, and then we sort of send it off other places occasionally.
So was that kind of your doing, getting those contacts in, or were they already there?
There
Maddie already did those.
there was a few always there. What Mandy
Yeah.
had established, we just added to it really, just talking to people, and people, you know, it kind of snowballs. You go to these festivals and people with stores find you and they talk to you, and then, you know, and it just goes from there really.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I wanted to have 10 good wholesale accounts.
Yeah.
That were, you know, doing really well. And so I had a few that I had started with, and then, so that was one of the things Matt was mostly trying to get our online business going.
Which is taking off as well.
Taking off better, because I didn't have the time or the expertise to fiddle with that.
Whoa. So this is your soap room.
Yeah.
So this is really not necessarily what's next for the farm, but just kind of where the future is headed, is just more and more soap. How many bars of soap are you guys going through right now within a unit of time?
So we make 60 pounds at a time, so they're all there, as you'll be able to
Wow.
see. So they were made on Thursday, and they're just curing at the moment.
Yep,
and then
good.
anywhere like at a, you know, normal farm, like a good farmer's market, we could sell sort of like 100 bars of soap sometimes, a really good one, especially the new ones that we're doing. But then like our smaller ones, you know, you're sort of selling like 40 bars of soap, you know, that kind of thing. And then wholesalers, so we have like a limit on wholesalers that they have to order so many, obviously.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
But usually we have a store up in Helen, Georgia, and they will order anything between 100 and 200 bars at a time. We've got a store in Athens, just down the road, and they will order, you know, 100 sort of bars of soap. And that's every sort of couple of months, really. So we go through quite a lot of soap,
This
quite
is
a high
what,
turnover.
how many,
That's awesome.
how many
So
are you getting now?
this will make 28. This loaf, basically. So there's
168 bars there.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, and you know, currently like January, February was very down. It's like slow
After
time.
Christmas is so
Exactly.
hard for anything retail.
But it's been really good this year.
That's awesome.
Comparatively
It's been
to our
really
previous,
good this
yeah.
year. So like we did winter markets, which were really good, and online as well. Online's been really good, which surprised us.
Are you just in your own website, or do you have like an Etsy shop or anything like that?
We're on our own, just on our own website.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're
So
thinking about Etsy.
you're thinking about Etsy, but we're not sure because it's seeing what like the entry barriers are for that. You know, there's a lot of soaps on Etsy. You know, not massive amounts of goat's milk soap, but also as well, part of our selling point is that we don't want it to be too expensive.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we see a lot of, you know, handmade soaps, you know, and they're quite expensive, and you know, people can go through them in a week sometimes.
Yeah.
But we want lots of people to be able to use them. We don't think that having less in a bar of soap compared to like commercial should be that much more expensive.
Yeah.
You know, it's an all natural bar. It's great for your skin. So why you don't want to price people out to having good quality products.
We want people to, our soaps are meant for people to use on a normal basis.
Yeah.
They're not
They're
they're
special
given
soaps.
as gifts, but it's not, we don't cater, so therefore they're not colorful. They're all plain because we don't
this
put
is
color.
all natural coloring.
If
Yeah.
you see color in them, it's a result of like vanilla would change them to chocolatey looking colors and things like that. But we don't put any type of colorants in there.
Unless it's the colorant of clay.
Yeah.
Or we do like indigo in some of them. So
Okay.
it's a nice blue
And we've
color.
been- shampoo,
And we've been lucky that, I don't know, our recipes, I'm not sure what, but I came up with a good recipe. And so it's a good basic recipe. We have a lot of repeat customers who've been buying soap from us. So we don't have any issues with that. You just be amazed at how many people have skin issues.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, if we can
And
fix them.
you've seen it helping.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
and
yeah.
people come to us and tell us, you know,
People
and
with
that was-
psoriasis and eczema.
yeah, you know, it's never gonna cure it,
Right.
But it's just
It
never
helps.
gonna. It helps it like dumb it down a lot, and
Yeah.
you know, and it doesn't dry you out because of the glycerin in the goat milk. So it's very high in fat.
Yep.
And a lot of commercial soaps will take that out, but we've got no use to take it out, you know. So
Yeah.
we keep it in. So that helps a lot. Yeah.
And I was basically able to take it to a certain level, you know, and then you kind of reach your you know, I had a lady in Florida do the design work. That's what those pictures are for the labels.
There are logos.
These are your labels. Oh,
yeah.
That's for the dog soap, and that's our normal soap, and then that's our Castile soap. So we've got kids because it's gentle. For them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, you know, I did a lot of that kind of work, the basic. And then Matt came in, and he happened to have been taking classes. So it was kind of fun for him in business. So it was kind of like he could see, you know, be reading about it. He's like, oh, guess what? You know, but he helped like make everything more uniform. You know, he came in and he had his outsider's eye to come in and say, you know, we need to do this and that.
Like what? Like, do you have like a specific example or?
So like just all the labels just looking the same. You know, it sounds really silly, but like we do all our own stuff. That's what keeps costs down. And you know, I think we do a very good job for our own thing. You know, but it was just like we've got a template for labels, and they all look the same, and it's just easier that you can, you know, to have that. It's like brand recognition, so people can see that and they think, oh, that's what it is. That's Leaping Goat soap. I recognise that. But before, sort of labels were a little bit different. You know, different logos, different colour paper. And it didn't really lend itself to people recognising it. Yeah. So what happened? You know, you have a whole brand that looks uniformed. You know, it doesn't have to look boring or anything, but you know, people recognise it and they remember it as well. You know, so
with you kind of founding this place and being here for so long, Sam leaving and then coming back, and Matt being born in another country, traveling, and ending up in another country. What does home and home farming mean to all of you?
Good question. You want to go first, maybe?
Well, to be kind of corny,
Please.
I never expected to have my kids here. Now I'm just kind of think about crying. I never thought, you know, because I left home and never came back. I think for me, having the farm was a great place for the kids to grow up. At least that's how I felt about it. You know, and they were exposed to animals, they were outside, they got to do all the things that I didn't get to do when I was growing up, living on the 8th floor of an apartment building, right? Yeah. And so I think in my wildest dreams, I never would have thought that she would come back and do ghosts. Let me just tell you, I had to put money on which of my children would ever do that, this was not the one that I thought would.
Do you think I dragged her along there?
I think so. I think
somehow.
So because she didn't like getting dirty. She's not giving shots. You know, she's not going to.
She's the aftercare. You give the hugs after the shots.
But it always thrills me to see when she does take charge, so that she actually learns something. Because you never know. And then to have a daughter that's a vet, I can't. You know, I'm like, wow. You know, and then my son, he's an engineer. So and Samantha's a teacher, and I always make fun of it because she's a Montessori teacher. But actually, I'm so proud of their accomplishments. So to me, having them close by is really nice, and being able to work with your children, because I've always been jealous, you know, in the county there's lots of extended family, and I like being able to work with my family. But if that's not what they wanted, that was fine with me. Right. But the fact that they're here, it's nice, but I don't want them to stay because I like it. So, so I'm excited that this is the part that they like, because, you know, Matt could have said anything. He said, "Let's make cheese." You know.
Well, I think that's part of what, you know, I was gonna go on to say. Like I came here and I loved it here. Like when we were, you know, long distance, when we were sort of just dating, really. And I just I think I just saw a lot of opportunity as well. Not like, you know, not milking the farm for all it's worth, really, but I was like, this is a good thing to be a part of. You know, there's a soap business, there's goats, you know, and there's all sorts of things that you can do with this. And I'm really into food, and we've spoken about the cheese, haven't we? Eventually, and that could be something, you know, eventually, but not right now. We've spoken about that, and I sort of thought, yeah, that would be, you know, really cool to do that kind of thing, and you know, and just being out here, you know, it's a perfect location. You're not far from a town. You know, you're not like on, you know, miles away, and you know, you've got like the best of both worlds. Really, really enjoy being here. And
what does your family think about you being here?
I mean, I'm an only child as well.
Okay. That's a little dicey.
So
Especially if the grandkids come along.
yeah,
Right?
so they've been here a few times, so they love it out here, and they can definitely see why. It's not like they come here and they're like, you know,
Why are you doing this?
exactly. They can definitely
Like
see
my
it.
mother.
Yeah, exactly. So
Why is there too much dirt?
So they when they come out here, they love it as well. You know, so that helped me to come out here. You know, like to know that, a bit like what Mandy said. Like they obviously didn't want me to leave, but they're very supportive of me doing this. You know,
That's awesome.
so yeah, you know, that made it a lot easier to be here.
What would you have been
Same.
doing if you were in England?
I'd have been working in an office probably.
Yeah.
You know, I did, you know, and that's kind of what helped because I did that before I taught. You know, I worked in offices and like.
Is that what your parents do? What do they
So
do?
my mum's retired now.
Okay.
My dad works for like an oil engineering company.
Okay.
But yeah, his is office work.
Yeah.
And the town I grew up in, there's not much going on really. So I'd have left it anyway.
Yeah.
And that's why I left to go abroad.
Yeah.
Just to see, you know, something else. And I've always said, like, to my parents, like, even if I hadn't have ended up in America, I'd have probably wouldn't be at home anyway.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, we know. You know, like, we've kind of figured that out, you know, like once I left, because I was only going to go for 6 months, and all in all, I've been away for 12 years. So, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I think for me, I think traveling really did it for me.
Okay.
Because I think when you travel and you go see other places, I think it makes you appreciate where you came from.
Yeah.
And it gives you a different perspective. And then the other part of it is for me is like education side. That's kind of a little bit of what I want to do with it someday because I bring my school out here.
I was gonna ask that. If you're studying 9 to 12
Yeah,
Montessori,
they love
I'm
it.
sure this is a wonderful.
Yeah. And I think anytime people can be around animals, I think is good. I think it's healthy for us humans to be around other animals.
Yeah.
Animals. I think it's good for people to touch animals and to just be around them. Good for your like mental health. It's good for physical health. And then anytime people come here, they love it. So I would definitely love to just, as Mom has been doing for so long, just keep sharing it with people.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of what we have envisioned for the future.
Because I feel like there's a lot of farms that close themselves off to people. It's like, we're a farm, we do animals, and that's it. But we've always got people coming over. We've always got friends, like we invite them over, and even like random people from the market that, you know, like, because we always show them pictures and stuff and on our Instagram and whatever. And we're like, yeah, you can always come and visit. And then they do. And you're like, oh, okay. You know, they just sort of show up, you know, but it's important, you know. We like doing that. We want people to.
But I think knowledge is power. You know, I think
Yeah.
the more you educate people and you bring them out here, even if it's people, we have people come from Atlanta and they come out here and they're like, wow, it's so quiet, it's so green.
Even people
and
from
they're like,
Athens.
look at the animals. And we're like, yeah.
And people from Amsterdam, when we do yoga,
Yeah.
Oh, you guys do go yoga?
Yeah.
they're like freaked out.
And
We're
they're-
outside.
And they're large animal vets.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
like they're
yeah.
like small
They
ruminant
love
club vets.
it,
And
yeah.
they can't believe, like, they're like, wow, we don't ever get to do this. And they're just down the road in Athens. And they're surrounded by farms, you know.
They
so-
don't even care about the yoga. they come
That's what
out
I'm
and just
yeah.
to be in the quiet and
the goats walking
yeah,
by,
it's just
you know.
to relax. Yeah.
And like I said, we're not exactly particularly remote.
Right.
Right.
You know, it's not, you know,
We're
there's
10
way,
minutes from
there's
Athens.
way, and there's a road running along. It's not like, you know, and there's a neighborhood, so it's.
But
you know,
again, this is an importance with farm, and I think farmers have to stand up for themselves as much as we probably hate it.
Yeah.
That's why it's important for people like us
Uh-huh.
who can do it and we have the resources to do it and the personalities to do it.
Absolutely.
To do it.
Yeah.
Because there are other people who can't, you know.
And we
So
support
it's-
farmers
yeah.
markets. Like, I'm the president of the farmers market
Awesome.
for our county here. And so this is, you know, people are like, why do you go to those other farmers markets? Because you don't make as much money. I said, well, because it's all part of educating people about exposure. They may not go to the big one in Athens because maybe they just feel intimidated or they have some negative thing that happened or whatever. But I can reach people, you know, at the farmers markets. And,
And I feel like that goes back right round to like the personality of talking to people when you're selling.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
you know, I'm sure you met loads of farmers that, you know, they want to tell people things, but they're not, you know, articulate, you know, they don't know how to sort of put their point across. But I feel like here we've got a good balance where we deal with the public quite a lot and have done, and you know, and can talk to people on a level without being like condescending or shouting at them or whatever.
Do you think that that might be like one of the biggest struggles that farmers have facing them, is just how to talk to people?
I think so, especially, you know, like, you know, people that have grown up in farming and that's all they've ever known. You know, they go to school, you know,
knowing things you don't know, right?
Yeah.
Well, you're isolated.
Yeah.
On most farms, you're isolated. And then you go to school with other farm kids. And I think visiting other countries, getting out. You know, people think you know, once you go to another country, you're like, oh, those people aren't so bad. It's the same thing. Go to the city. Oh, they're just like we are, but they just hadn't grown up the same way I did. You know, doesn't everybody know?
I think people can also be hesitant to bring people on their farm because they might be scared of judgment.
And that happens to us.
I think
sometimes
it's good.
I get,
like,
you know, I think about that twice.
Yeah.
Sometimes lately, it does make me nervous.
But I think once you explain things to people, they're like, oh, that makes sense. Because, you know, like we dehorn our goats, you know?
Right.
So people are like, why do you do that? That's so, you know, mean. And we're like, well, actually, it keeps them from getting caught in the fence and potentially breaking their neck. Or it keeps them from fighting each other. It's easier for us to handle. Like, and we have people who come into the farm and said we don't want them getting hit with horns and things. So there's all these reasons, and horned? Like, oh, so it's not like torture, or so it's like, so it's interesting, you know. But people might be scared to explain that to people.
Well, I am just so thankful and grateful for you guys. This has been awesome to see your place, to be in here and smelling your wonderful soap. If there's any links that anybody is looking for, those will be in the description. So we'll get those.
Thank you.
But I just thank you, all three of you, for letting me come out and talk with me and share your story with me.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank you.
that.
Thank you for coming out. And,
coming
it's
out.
been great talking to you.
Thank you so much.